Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I am Nick from Australia. Tonight's video is going to be my top 5 worst NRL Grand Finals of the NRL era. So basically the Grand Finals from 1998 up until present date, which is now. So we're going to get into that in a second. But before I get into that, I just want to give a shout out to a YouTube channel called Always Brisbane Broncos. It's my brother. He is a Broncos supporter. He has a YouTube channel called Always Brisbane Broncos, putting out some fantastic Broncos content. So if you haven't subscribed to that channel already, make sure you go and check it out and subscribe to his channel. He's just uploaded a video this afternoon, so go and subscribe to him if you haven't already. So yeah, go and check him out on YouTube, guys. But anyway, let's get into tonight's video, and it's the top 5, my top 5 worst NRL Grand Finals since 1998 up until now. Now, look, there's a couple of games here that I have left out. Obviously, it's a very tough list to put together, the top 5. I'm not going to include the 2007 and 2009 Grand Final because Melbourne obviously cheated those 2 years with the salary cap scandal. So 2007 and 2009 will not feature in this video. But without further ado, let's get straight into it. So we'll go from number 5 up to number 1. And number 5, the fifth worst Grand Final of the NRL era, was the Tigers beating my team, the Cowboys, in the 2005 Grand Final. Now, look, obviously, I'm a Cowboys supporter. This game pisses me off. Now, look, 2005 was a year with plenty of potential. The Tigers and Cowboys were never meant to play in the Grand Final. 2005 was supposed to be the Dragons and the Eels, but both sides pretty much choked it out. Parramatta went out to the Cowboys in the preliminary final, where they got beat 29 points to 0. And the Dragons got beat by the West Tigers. I think it was 20 points to 12 at the Sydney Football Stadium. So, it was 4th against 5th in the grand final. Tigers and Cowboys, they played in the qualifying final in 2005 as well. And the Tigers beat the Cowboys, I think it was 50 to 12 or something. They blew them off the park. And then they met in the grand final. And the Cowboys got off to a good start in that game. Matty Bowen scoring the first try. And then, obviously, Benji Marshall doing his stupid flick. And the Tigers ended up winning the game, and ever since that game, I've never liked the West Tigers since. They broke my heart, they broke my dreams, they broke my childhood. So stuff the Tigers, and this game annoys me, and I don't like it that much at all. So number 5, it goes to the Tigers and the Cowboys of 2005. The 4th worst grand final of the NRL era, in my opinion, was the Roosters versus Manly game in the 2013 grand final, where the Roosters won 26 points to 18. Now, look, a lot of people like this grand final for obvious reasons because it was high scoring, it was entertaining, there was a few tries scored, and it was a very entertaining game. This game makes my list because of a couple of reasons. Number 1, the refereeing in this game was absolutely garbage. Both sides. The Roosters got some ridiculous calls to go their way. Manly got some ridiculous calls to go their way. The refereeing was garbage the whole game. I think Shane Hayne was the referee. What a complete statue, a complete moron. This game had controversial calls after controversial calls. Bad calls both ways, and in the end, the Roosters ended up winning the game. Michael Jennings scored a try, which was an unbelievable try too, by the way, but there was a call before that where it should have been a Manly ball, but the Roosters got the ball when they scored through Michael Jennings, somehow scored that ridiculous try. But, a great game ruined by terrible refereeing. And this game, it just pissed me off. The whole 2013 final series was ridiculous in general. I mean, you had the 7 tackle set game between Cronulla and North Queensland. You had Melbourne somehow go out in straight sets, which was just crazy. You had Souths choke a 14-0 lead in the preliminary final. You had all these ridiculous things happen in the 2013 final series, and then you had the grand final where it was decided by a bad referee. So the 2013 grand final is number 4 on this list. And if you go and watch the game right now, you'll see a bunch of controversial calls. So that's number 4 on the list. Number 3 on the list is the 2018 grand final between the Roosters and the Melbourne Storm, where the Roosters won 21 points to 6. Now, look, obviously this game had a lot of hype between Cooper Cronk. Will he play? Is he going to play? Is he injured? What's he going to do? Obviously, he played. Cooper Cronk played in the grand final, but his shoulder was hanging by a thread. He tore his rotator cuff pretty much off the bone. He didn't do anything in the grand final. He just stood there like an extra coach. Luke Keary pretty much played halfback and 5'8" the whole game. Mitch Orbison played in the halves as well. He did a very good job. And you know what? I thought this game was going to be an absolute cracker in the 2018 grand final. It was just a really, really boring game. It was a slow start. I think the Roosters led 18-0 or something at one stage. And then I think it was 18-6 at halftime. And then there was a field goal from the Roosters. And then it was 19-6. And then it was a penalty goal to make it 21-6. It was just a boring game, you know. Roosters and Storm going into that 2018 grand final. We all thought it was going to be a great game. You know, Melbourne, they've been so dominant over the years, and the Roosters as well. They were thereabouts. Both sides were very dominant and very good the last 10 years or so going into that grand final, and it was a very disappointing game, and I wasn't really thrilled with the game in general. It wasn't great quality. Roosters were too good. It was a bludger of a game, and the Roosters were too good, and it is the 2018 grand final between Roosters and Storm. It's number 3 on the list. Number 2 on the list. This is a game that just makes me feel sick in the stomach. I can't even describe this game. This game just makes me want to throw up. It makes me want to eat 5-year-old bread or something. It's a terrible game. The 2017 grand final between the Cowboys and the Storm. Now look, Melbourne in 2017 were very dominant. They had a brilliant year. I think they only lost about 4 games that year. In the 2017 final series, Melbourne, they finished first. They played Parramatta the first week of the finals. They beat Parramatta 16-14 off a bit of a controversial game. I think it was 16-14 or 18-16. I think it was 16-14 from memory. Everyone remembers the Will Chambers part of the game where he just pretty much grabbed the football and went to sleep. It was ridiculous. Melbourne ended up winning that game controversially. Going to the preliminary final, having the week off, they took on the Broncos down in Melbourne on the Friday night. They smashed Brisbane. I think it was 30-0 or 32-0. They were far too good for Brisbane in that preliminary final. And then they got to the grand final and they smashed the Cowboys 34-6. And that's what the Cowboys run that year, 2017. They come from 8th position. They lost Jonathan Thurston and Matt Scott. They had Tamari Martin in the halves with Michael Morgan. Michael Morgan was probably the best player in the world at the time. He went to a whole new level. They knocked off Cronulla, who were the reigning premiers. Going into that 2017 final series, they beat them 15-14 in extra time. Then they beat Parramatta the next week, 24 points to 16 at ANZ Stadium. Then they went to the Sydney Football Stadium or Allianz Stadium, whatever you want to call it, and they smashed the Roosters in that game, 29 points to 16, and then they got to the grand final, and Melbourne were far too good, 34-6. But the grand final itself was a bit frustrating, you know. It was 0-0 for the first 20 minutes. Sean Fenton did his ACL or whatever it was in the first 3 or 4 minutes, and then Adai Carr scored a try where Tamari Martin was about to tackle him, and then the referee gets in the way, and ever since that moment, Melbourne just went on with the game. I'm not saying the Cowboys were robbed or anything, but that game, that call was a bit controversial. It was a 50-50 call. Probably shouldn't have been a try, but Melbourne dominated the Cowboys in that grand final, and it was a really poor game to watch. Both sides, the Cowboys were terrible. They had no stamina left going into that grand final. The Storm were clinical. They had the big 3. It was pretty unfair when you think about it compared to what Melbourne had to what the Cowboys had. So Melbourne were too good in that game, and it is number 2 on the list. And number 1, the worst NRL grand final between 1998 and 2020 was the 2008 grand final where Manly beat Melbourne 40-0. Now look, this game was just completely boring. I know Melbourne, obviously, they were over the salary cap in 2008, and Melbourne, Manly absolutely dominated them in this grand final, but Melbourne didn't have Cameron Smith, which you could say was a huge loss. It obviously is a big loss, but would it have made much of a difference? I don't know. Manly were pretty prime that year. I don't think anyone could have beat Manly in 2008. Now, the 2008 final series was actually a bit surprising. Now, from Manly's perspective, they finished second that year. They played the Dragons the first week of the finals. They beat them. I think it was 38 points to 6 at Brookie. They had the week off. But then they played the Warriors, and then I think they beat them 30-6 or 32-6. They smashed the. I think it was 32-6. They beat They beat the Warriors. And then they got to the grand final and they smashed Melbourne 40-0. As for the Melbourne Storm in the 2008 final series, they They lost to the Warriors the first week, 18 points to 15, which shocked everyone. Michael Witt scoring that fantastic try. And then Melbourne had to go to Brisbane to play the Broncos in that semi-final. And then, unfortunately, I think it was Ashton Sims who knocked the ball on for Brisbane. And Melbourne ended up winning the game for Greg Inglis with about a minute to go. Melbourne getting away with that one, 16-14. And then they went down to, I think it was ANZ Stadium to defeat the Sharks, 28 points to 0. And they were without Cameron Smith in that prelim as well. And they smashed Cronulla in that preliminary final. And then in the grand final, Manly absolutely dominated them 40-0. Now, I love watching Melbourne get flogged in finals games. It's fantastic watching Melbourne get beat because, you know, when a team's in the finals for so many years and they're doing everything right, you want to see them get beat and all that. So it was good to see Manly flog them, but it was a very boring game. And looking back on the 2008 grand final between Manly and Melbourne, it was one of the worst NRL grand finals I've ever seen. It was probably the worst one I have watched. It was boring. It was one-sided, and it wasn't a great game at all. I kind of wish Cronulla had beat Melbourne in that preliminary final now. The more I think about it, because imagine a Manly versus Cronulla grand final in 2008. It would have been unbelievable. Two rivals going at it. It would have been fantastic. But anyway, Manly versus Melbourne. It was the worst grand final of the NRL era, in my opinion. But that's my top 5 worst NRL grand finals. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. What's your top 5 worst NRL grand finals? I'd love to know in the comment section below. But anyway, guys, I'm getting out of here. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you guys go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to donate to the channel, if you want to support the channel via PayPal, there is a link in the description below. But anyway, guys, I'm getting out of here. Thanks for watching this video. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.